This video is about all the times that people have chopped me down at the knees. We call it tall poppy chopping in Australia, but as it turns out, all these things are usually caused by envy. It's your job to work out what is real and what is just complete and utter guff. So today I thought I would do something, a little exercise, to show you that I'm not just a cold hard stoic. I've had to deal with some really nasty feedback and kickback during my art career, especially earlier on, but it's gone on my entire career, and I have been in the game for nearly 40 years. So I wanted to share this with you today because I thought you might find it encouraging to know that you're not alone in how you get chopped down. In Australia, we have a saying for that. It's called the tall poppy syndrome, where there's this culture that if someone rises up too big for their boots, so to say, you know, the tall toppy, then they must be cut down. There's merit in that. In the Jungian concept, that's about dealing with inflation. If someone gets inflated and they lose perspective with reality and everything around them, sometimes the universe will actually drop you down in order that you actually get your feet back on the ground, just to become more earthy. Because when you are like that, if you go too far up in the clouds, you actually lose track of your actual creativity. I've talked about that a lot here, because you start to follow whatever it is that brings you that tall poppy status, right? So you can lose track very quickly of your connection to your work internally. Now, there is merit, as we said. It's how you make money. It's how you make a lot of money if you actually get to that point, but it's all about balance. All right, so what I did is, I'm way out of the trend, but you know, all the videos that say 5 things I gave up, blah, 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 or 10 things you can do without. So I had a bit of a think about this, about times that were really significant chops that I experienced through my career where, it actually went in, it sunk in. The knife hit my belly and I had to pull back and just say, oh, that didn't make me feel good. And I guess if I was a less enthusiastic type person, I might have given up at that point. Now, this is not a comprehensive list. It's only 8 that came to mind instantly, and I want to share them with you today. I'm going to tell you a little brief story about each one, and you can see how these things can actually destroy your enthusiasm. It didn't for me, but honestly, they actually hurt. They always hurt. I'm giving you this video today to give you encouragement to know that if you get chopped, you just get back up and keep going. All right, so here we go. Early in my career, I was in Broome in the northwest of Australia, a very isolated town, but we had big tourism. And my work was really taking off. It wasn't just tourists, it was collectors. It was going really well, and I was having a great time. I remember one of the first ones really well. You never forget them. And it did sting because I was only early in my career and I thought I was doing okay. There was one artist, I actually loved his work. He was a pretty formulaic painter, but his abstract paintings of the beach and everything were just beautiful pinks and things. He did sell very well. And I thought he was a nice guy. I got on with him quite well. I was putting exhibitions on all around the town. I was in the resorts and things were going fantastically. And the comment came back. This was his comment, and I'm not giving any names here. I know I'll never forget their names. And he said, oh, she's just the flavour of the month. She'll last about a year and she'll be gone. Now, listen to me. I was about 3 years into my career. So here I am 37 years later, and I don't even know if he still paints. So there's the first chop. Now, there was another moment in my career where I'd been painting absolutely from my heart and it was going really well. And just as I was sort of growing, I was learning as I was painting. I didn't have the formal education. I was reading books, I was observing art. We didn't have internet or anything like that. So, I'd look in the library and that was how I learned. And I started to follow trends, as you do, painting these great big beautiful birds with tropical flowers in watercolour. And the other arm I had, because I was learning, was very traditional landscape oil paintings. And people loved those as well. You see, I was trying all these styles. It's just what you do. So anyway, I went on a field trip with my mum up to the Kimberleys, and it's just like a really remote outback place, beautiful gorges and waterfalls, real wilderness. And I was really inspired when I got to Winjana Gorge about this story about this Aboriginal outlaw, as they called him. Pigeon was his nickname, Jandamara. I'm not going to go into the full details, but when I went there, I had this tiny little leaflet that I was given. It's a tourism thing that told the story. So you didn't just go to the gorge and camp there and look at the gorge. I got this narrative that all this took place, this great big shootout with the police. It was back in the days when the Aboriginals were sort of put in chains. So it was a very interesting topic. This guy just rose up and rebelled. The tale was all there in this tiny little brochure. My imagination just took off. I went up there to, draw in the landscape, in the creek bed, charcoal drawings of trees and, landscapes, blah, blah, blah. But, oh boy, when I got home, I said to my husband, you know what? I have to do this. I am not going to continue to paint like I'm painting. The artists I loved the most in the books were the Angry Penguin group. They painted in the 40s and 50s in Melbourne in Australia, where I was born actually, right in the same spot. And they had this very, I guess you could call German expressionism. Sidney Nolan, Albert Tucker, Arthur Boyd, Joy Hester and John Percival. Anyway, these artists, oh my God, it was me. I knew it. It's that thing where you say, that's how I feel and think. So I said to my husband, this story deserves something so powerful, so much more gutsy. This is what I have to do. And if I don't do it, I'm going to give up painting. And at that stage, I thought I was rocking and rolling. I think I'd been painting for about 7 or 8 years. And honestly, I was doing exceptionally well. So I took the chance. And I did it, and it was very successful. But you know what? The complaints, I got so many complaints. All my previous collectors were like, oh, I didn't like that. I prefer your nice flowers and I prefer your landscapes. And it was at that point that I could have actually just dropped it. That's when I became a real narrative painter with guts, with no fear. Oh, it was just so great. I was on fire. I just loved every minute of it. And I was getting people coming to the gallery like freaking out, like high profile people saying, this is so scary. This is really dangerous stuff you're doing here. I thought, I don't care. So anyway, I put the exhibition on locally in Broome with a gallery there first. And quite a lot of them sold immediately. But there was one person who was fairly high up in the, I guess you could say, Broome society. And her comment was, this is all crap. This is complete and utter crap. And that came back to me from the very nice gallery owner. And I thought, that is really stinging. Anyway, I kept going and I'd already booked to have the show put on at the Perth Mint in Perth. It went down there and it sold out. People were raving about the show. Over 6 pages in WA style, like a huge magazine. And pretty much it really did launch my career for being what I really am. So I could have really taken that criticism to heart, and I didn't. I walked on by because I trusted myself. There were the previous collectors who were mad because I changed, right? There's the thing about your style. And then there was that chop her down thing because how dare she? So there you go. Anyway, I got spotted by a very good commercial gallery in Sydney and they gave me my first big show. And I just stayed in that mode. I painted in that energy, that feeling. And you know what happened with that? I sent that exhibition over, the first one, and it just went fantastically. So they booked me in for another one. So I came back and created another exhibition. This time I did another really strong, controversial one, and I called it Is God a Duck Shooter? It was referring to the injustice in the world and how it was being overseen by all these so-called global leaders. So I refer to that as my New World Order series. Anyway, I'd shipped all that over and I was preparing to get ready to go back home. It takes a few weeks for all this to go on. And I got a phone call from the gallery, probably a week before I was due to fly over, and they said, have you got any more works? And I said, I just sent you like 30 paintings, guys. What do you mean? Is that not enough? And she said, oh, well, we weren't going to tell you because we wanted to surprise you, but we have sold every painting. And I thought, what? The reward for hanging in there, for trusting your voice, to waving off those buggers that criticise you. Anyway, I flew over there for the opening, high as a kite, baby on the breast. The gallery had managed to convince a representative from the state gallery to come and have a look. And this woman she had blue hair, probably looked like she'd just come out of an art degree. She sort of walked around and was all confused and left, not really knowing what to say. Very confused. Oh, a couple of things that were nothing really, unimpressed, right? Which left me feeling a little bit flat, because we all dream of being collected in the big state gallery, right? Let alone that all the private corporations and things were buying my work anyway, banks, the lot. However, I managed to get Philip Adams, who is a well-known national radio person in Australia, to come and look at the show. And he rarely ever looks at exhibitions. And he looked at the work. He walked up to one of the big narrative paintings and he said, "These works look so delicious, so seductive. You walk in the room and you go, oh, look at all the colour and it just looks so great." And he said, "Come with me." And he linked into my arm and we walked over and he said, "And when you get up close to them, when you really look at what's going on, it's like this big 4x2 bang across the back of your head when the message sinks in. It's absolutely mind-blowing. You basically just lure people in and then you go whack." He said, "I love it." And that was my reward. Anyway, the exhibition happened. There were celebrities and all sorts of big promotional people there, blah, blah, blah. Amazing. So there you go. That was me dealing with the blue hair woman, the state gallery that said, "Don't care, nothing to see here." Just couldn't comprehend it. So that's that one. Now, here's another one. And this is from a reputed artist. So I had an exhibition down in what was called New Collectibles, which was in Perth. And it was called Once Upon a Time There Was a Man. And I used my narrative structure to create this exhibition, which had a bit of a story. And it was about man kind of messing with nature. And I kind of put the man in as like, once upon a time there was a man, as like a kind of part of nature that came along, and then he started to try and meddle with it. And that's what the exhibition was all about. But I used my own creative way of actually showing that. For example, one of them was called Man Making a Bird, and it was his dream to construct a bird, which of course is the aeroplane, and things like that. So it was highly creative, highly narrative. Once again, huge sales, everything sold. But there was this one artist that came along and gave a critique of my work, who was a well-known artist. And he told the gallery owner, of course she related to me, thanks very much. He walked in and he said, "Oh, so she's going to go down this road, is she? That's, yeah, okay, that's unfortunate. She's going down that road," because I chose the path of the narrative. What the hell? I'd known him from early in my career and he'd known about me when I was painting more decorative or traditional work. So he looked at that and he basically thought that this was stupid because I was going in this direction, which was incredibly unique. My art was nothing like anyone else's art. The closest it would be is to the Angry Penguins with the narrative thing going on. Let me tell you right now, just as my little get back, that artist has painted the same for 60 years, I think it would be, commercially saleable every year. For the entire time I've been watching his work, it's been exactly the same. It has not changed. A couple of colour changes, but pretty much the same. Looks great. Basically, it's decoration. You know, he gets a good price. But there you go, see, because he didn't like it. And that was a moment that I was really stung by because I admired him. I liked his work. I really did. But it didn't make me not like him. It just made me think, oh, water under the bridge. Now let me see what else I've got. Oh yes, here's one. Now I had a really successful exhibition career with really top galleries in Perth and interstate and even overseas. So I had no problems. I could barely keep up with them. But there was one particular gallery operator or owner in Perth who made a comment about my work. And this was after I'd been painting for 20 years and doing exceptionally well, probably the highest selling artist in Australia at that time. And she said, "Oh, she hasn't done the hard yards." Now, you tell me how I hadn't done the hard yards. I wasn't in her gallery, her stable. So there you go. And she closed a gallery and she's moved overseas, but here I am, I'm still here. Now, there have been other instances like where I've been working with a great commercial gallery, well, I thought was, and then they do something like they just won't pay you. You've got to end those contracts. You can't work with people like that. Even if they are great, you can't do it. It's not worth it. You can't put up with bad business deals, and you will get slapped down all the time. It'll be nothing to do with your work, the quality of your work. It'll be to do with someone else's hurt ego, okay? It's always about their hurt ego, not yours. Don't let yours get hurt. Now, this is a tricky one, but I do want to share it with you. I am happily married to myself. I stopped having partners decades ago because I realised that I was very happy on my own. But through my life, and now I haven't had a lot of partners. I was married and then I had 2 serious relationships. And through every single one of those, what popped up was absolutely fascinating. In 2 of the instances was they literally did not like that I had status and a career. So I tended to be attracted to very masculine men and strong men. So of course they were strong and masculine, and they weren't praising of the arts necessarily. Because I was a public facing person and I had a profile and I had status, they would do things all the time to try and chop me down, include driving me mad, creating all these dramas, which seemed like an attempt to completely destroy my emotional harmony. And it was all because I was painting and dedicated to my work. I was a loving partner. I would do anything for them and probably did too much. Once I saw it, I thought, no, that's not the right kind of relationship. I sort of got to this point where I thought, I can't have a relationship with a man because my picker is off. So no blaming of the men. I just thought, no, this is something else. I'm not destined for that. It was me. I took responsibility where I thought my own husband was my inner husband, and that made a big difference in my life. When I stopped putting my self-worth out there to someone else, and I'm not putting down having a wonderful relationship with your partner if you have, but I stopped that. I stopped projecting anything out and pulled it all back to myself. And then I could really make progress. It was amazing. So when you're in a relationship, you can easily be chopped down regularly in ways you won't even realize it. I know lots of people that have wonderful supportive partners, and bless you, but I'm good, thank you. I would rather pay men to come and do the work, the man work I need done, so that I can get back to my work. Another stereotype I didn't fall into was, when I had my babies, I just kept working. I remember I was at the easel when my waters broke, painting this one particular painting. It was called The Lavender Women. I was standing there and bloop, oh, quick, go. Drove myself to hospital, which was only just down the road. So I kept going. And I think that this is another thing that you're told that you shouldn't. That's rubbish. You can be a mum and do your art right at the same time with those babies. There's no excuses. I got put down for that as well from various people. I just didn't tolerate it. A lot of this stuff about being put down is whether or not you tolerate it. I get critique and I listen. Does it make sense? Here's the golden rule. This is how I've worked it out. When you get critique, when you get a knockdown, whether it's personal, for your art, whatever, just stop right there. The first question you should ask yourself is, what is the vested interest of that critique? I could see that these men, even though I was their lover, wanted a mother, and that when I did something that was outside, away from my attention on them, they didn't like it. So they would do all these funny little sabotage things. It was like being with a naughty boy or something. Crazy. And then when you look at all those art ones, it was just envy. Those artists that criticised me, that was envy. The same as the gallery owners. It was envy. Pure, unadulterated envy. And you can happily ignore the bulk of them and trust yourself. Trust what you know is the right direction. If you're trying to sell your artwork, you do need to listen to that. But don't let it compromise. Your own, what you know is where you can go, the best you can do. Work out on the edge of what you can do while being sensitive to the market. It's not black and white. It's not either or. It's somewhere in the middle. Okay, that's it. I'll see you next time.